الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله على عفوه بقدرته، والحمد لله على طول أناته في غضبه، وهو قادر على ما يريد. ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا وشفيعنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آله المعصومين وصحبه المنتجبين. Sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم: الحسن والحسين إمامان قاما أو قعدا. Both Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein are leaders, whatever strategy they choose in their life, whether they rise or whether they sit. The last lecture, I briefly was able to focus on the life of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba alayhi salatu wassalam because of the fact that it was the night before his birthday. Tonight I want to expand and cover a little bit more on that issue. And there is something else that I want to introduce into the conversation, that one of the brothers two of the brothers asked, why Imam Hassan? And this is a question that has been challenging the mind of scholars, literally right from the moment that the peace treaty was signed. Some believers, they even called Imam Hassan Mudhill al-Mu'mineen, is somebody that literally denigrated the believers with his signing of treaties and truce. We discuss this in a minute, but Imam Hassan, as I indicated the other night, was born on beginning of the 3rd of Hijri, 15th of Ramadan, that's the year 3 Hijri, and his death or martyrdom was on the year 50 after Hijrah, which makes him around 47 years old at the time of martyrdom. The total period of his imamah is about 10 years. And his khilafah is about 6 or 7 months. The reason why I say make a distinction between khilafah and imamah, because immediately as the Amir al-Mu'mineen was martyred, then technically imamah comes to Imam al-Hassan until his death. The death or martyrdom of Amir al-Mu'mineen was the year 40 after Hijrah, and the martyrdom of Imam Hassan was the year 50 after Hijrah. So his imamah was about 10 years. But his khilafah, the actual political authority, were only 7 months from the moment that people made bay'ah to the Imam in Masjid al-Kufa until he made truce and abdicated from power and retired to Medina, literally 6 or 7 months. He is the first son of Imam Ali and Fatima al-Zahra, and the first grandson of the Holy Prophet. His name, or at least his personality, has been mentioned in Ayat al-Tathir, Ashab al-Kisa, and Ayat Mubahala, and a few others. We don't have much detail from his life early on, from after the demise. We know that from his birth until the demise of the Holy Prophet, about 7 to 8 years, he was under the authority and the auspices of the Holy Prophet. So the Holy Prophet was responsible for his upkeep, teaching him, and so on. During the usurpation of Khilafah by what happened after Saqifa, we don't have any historical documents that would clearly indicate what happened to Imam Hassan as a young boy, about 8 years old, until the period that Amir al-Mu'mineen comes to power around the year 35 after Hijrah, which is literally close to 25 years. The Khilafah of Abu Bakr, the Khilafah of Umar, and after that, the Khilafah of Uthman. Very little has been recorded. Historians are trying to find out more by digging into some kind of manuscript and other books to see what they can find. But all authors, whether Lebanese, Iranians, Iraqis, they focus on what we have at the moment available, and they all admit that the history is anemic when it comes to recording of the early life of Imam Hassan. After the Shahada of Amir al-Mu'mineen, people gathered in Masjid al-Kufa, year 40 after Hijrah, and swore allegiance to Imam Hassan as the successor to Amir al-Mu'mineen, as a new Imam. Imam Hassan immediately organized and delivered a sermon that we have one fundamental problem that we really need to eradicate, and that is Muawiyah. So we need to organize ourselves, to organize the army, and go and finish Muawiyah, because after the Battle of Siffin, it still was left in limbo. Some people say between 40,000, less, little bit or more, came to the aid of Imam, and Imam sent his cousin, Ubaydullah ibn Abbas, with about 12 or 13,000 people to go as the front to go towards Muawiyah, and he would go to Sabat, which is a city in the old Iraq, and wait for the rest of the 40,000 to come so that he would follow Ubaydullah ibn Abbas. Unfortunately, Muawiyah knew how to deal with the head of the tribes in Kufa, as well as Ubaydullah ibn Abbas. He sent huge amount of money for Ubaydullah ibn Abbas to switch side, and he did. He took the money and went. We saw it in Syria. The army leaders, the Syrian army generals, according to some reports, each one received $50 million by the Americans and the Turks and the Saudis and others, just to forget about Syria and disappear. And the result was what we are seeing now. So Ubaydullah ibn Abbas disappears. The head of the tribes promised Muawiyah that if Hassan comes to Kufa, they are going to capture him and send him to Muawiyah. Muawiyah sends these letters to Imam Hassan and says, look, these are the people that you're going to rely upon them. Why don't we make a peace and truce? So I'll send you a white piece of paper. You write on it whatever you want. I have already signed for it. Then we agree on it. Imam Hassan was attacked by one of the Khawarij or two Khawarij in his tent. They injured him with a dagger in his leg and had to go to Madain for medical treatment. Once in Madain, he realized that he's been left alone. Literally, he doesn't have anybody. Most of the army has already disintegrated, the sedition within the army, and the tribal leaders that they were supposed to send some people, some army, they are not going to send anything. Contrary, they have already promised Muawiyah that they're going to capture Imam Hassan and send him to Muawiyah. And even his battalion leader, Ubaydullah ibn Abbas, his cousin, has already vanished. So he realized that there is no way else, no other way but to sign a treaty. And the treaty was signed based on text that he wrote, that Muawiyah is going to follow Kitabullah and the Sunnah of the Holy Prophet, would not appoint any successor after him, and would not attack or harm the Shia of Ahlul Bayt, etc., etc. Muawiyah immediately signed, it already signed, but immediately ignored all of these conditions. This the peace treaty has become the defining issue when it comes to the life of Imam Hassan. Everybody, from that time up to now, Sulh al-Hassan, Sulh al-Hassan. Why Imam Hassan signed the peace treaty? Why Imam Hussein stood up? Why he rose against Yazid, but when Muawiyah, he didn't do that. Imam Hassan agreed for a peace treaty. This has been one of the major crises that we have in when it comes to the life of Imam Hassan. I think at this particular time, I need to digress a little bit and introduce a concept which is very critical. And if we were to understand it, we will be able to better analyze the life of Ahlul Bayt, particularly Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Hassan, and Imam Hussein. And that is what we call the philosophy of power in Islam. How should power be structured, and under what circumstance to be used, and under what circumstances not to be used. This question of power is part of political science today, part of international relation, American foreign policy, etc., etc. But we're taking it back to the concept in Islam. Islam, right from the beginning, made it clear that it has a moral commitment to engage and defeat all kinds of oppression. All kinds. Whether they are political, economic, social, whatever it is. Society, according to Islam, or civil society, according to Islam, must be established on a moral and ethical political foundation. That's why, right from the start, the Holy Prophet stood up against the political and economic leaders that existed in Mecca, and they tried to resolve the issue. We will give you money, we will give you this and the other, just stay out of our own affair. What we have in the context of separation of church and state, that we would lead the political responsibility in ours. You go to your churches, your mosques, your synagogue, and so on, and pray as much as you want. And the Holy Prophet said, no. Part and parcel of this, the responsibility of Islam, is to change the society. It's an internal and external revolution. And it's not going to happen if you allow the evil, political evils that are in charge to stay where they are. The same thing happened at the beginning of Islamic revolution in Iran, when Marhum Imam rahmatullah alayhi immediately was asked that the way you are leading the revolution is going to go against international law. He said, so what? We are not here to follow international law. This revolution would not have been there if it wasn't for the fact that it wants to oppose the international law that supports evil. So Islam made it clear, and as a matter of principle, faith without power has no protection. Forget about these, what we call interfaith dialogue, Islam for peace, this. Never in the history of peace movement they have been being able to change anything without resorting to power at the end. Otherwise, you sit in your church, oh Lord, change the reality in Gaza, change the reality in Kashmir, change the reality in Middle East, change the reality of... God is not going to intervene on your behalf. إن الله لا يغير ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم. You want change? You take the mantle and move forward and be there. So faith without power has no protection and no means to remove a strong political evil that kills, corrupts, destroys, and without a shadow of a doubt. Political evil by default destroys, has the power. And you cannot challenge that power by sitting at home and saying, oh Lord, we recite the Hajj Ocean Kabir, and then you remove Muawiyah, or you remove Yazid, or you remove somebody else, as we have the tyrants today. It has to be done by the individual. So virtually every successful world power utilizes force. Go back in the history of human being. Islam is no exception. Understands this reality, but it says that for this force to succeed, you need the ideal leadership, the moral principle ideal leadership, as well as a society, what we call the political base, that work together. Aristotle, when he was alive, he thought, if you want to change your society, bring back the philosophers and put them in charge, society automatically going to change. The philosopher king, the concept that they introduced. Islam says, no, it's not going to happen. Even if you bring and put the most perfect example, al-insan al-kamil, the ma'sumin, in charge of a society, if the society is not prepared to stand up, support justice, and follow the guidelines of the Ahlul Bayt or these individuals who are in charge, they will be left on the margin. As Amir al-Mu'mineen said in the other hadith that I recited. He said, we have a right. If you give us that right, which is the right of leadership, then we would guide you to the right path and heaven. But if you don't, we will become marginalized on the perimeter of the society, and we have no role to play. Quran makes it clear. الذين أخرجوا من ديارهم بغير حق إلا أن يقولوا ربنا الله ولولا دفع الله الناس بعضهم ببعض لهدمت. Those who have been expelled from their homes, like the Palestinians, for no other reason other than proclaiming that Allah is our Lord. Had Allah not repelled the aggression of some people by the force of the others, the whole social structure is going to disintegrate. There always has to be a group of people that stand up to the injustice, stand up to the evil, to political evil that is powerful. People like Muawiyah, Yazid, that they have gone through, even first Khalif, second Khalif, and third Khalif, that they have gone through all the treacherous means to gain power. You're going to, by sitting back and say, please give us the power back? They're going to give it to you? No. They would use it against you. Muawiyah, immediately after signing the peace treaty with Imam Hassan, came to Kufa, went up the minbar and said, I didn't fought you for the sake of you praying, fasting, or doing anything. I knew that you already did it. I did it because I want to rule over you. It's a matter of power. So we have to be mindful of it. So this notion of resisting power with power is critical for the survival of any faith. The concept is reinforced in another hadith that we have from the Holy Prophet ﷺ. Somebody comes to the Holy Prophet and says, Ya Rasulullah, what should I do if someone tries to steal my wealth? Don't give it to him. What if he fights me? Holy Prophet says, fight back. What if he kills me? The Holy Prophet says, you will be martyred. What about if I kill him, then he will go to hell? You see the notion of power? If somebody is trying to act unjustly and take your wealth, even small wealth, let alone the whole political structure in the country or the society. Now, this is the issue that we need to pay a huge amount of attention to. That power is needed. Ahlul Bayt knew exactly their responsibility when it came to correction and remedy of a social structure that is being controlled by unqualified individuals, whether starting from first Khalif to going to the third Khalif or from Muawiyah going down. After the Saqifa, Amir al-Mu'mineen knew that if those who came to power, and by the way, Fatima al-Zahra says the same thing in Khutbah Fadakiyah, that the strategy that you have chosen is going to create bloodshed and poison within the community. We are paying the price now. 1,400 gone, We still, after 1400, we spent huge amount of money resurrecting Muawiyah, Amir al-Mu'minin. So after the travesty of Saqifa, Amir al-Mu'minin knew that this political order needs to be changed. And correcting the system and setting it right was the priority for Amir al-Mu'minin, without shadow of a doubt. Otherwise, why is he going to go and put Zahra on the back of a mule with Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein and go from one house to another house, reminding them that you swore allegiance to me after the Holy Prophet in Ghadir? To shake their mind and reminding them that, look, we really need to change the system. Amir al-Mu'minin outlines in Khutbah Shakhshiqiyya 2 major obstacles. Number one, what we call the external threat. He said, I found myself before these 2 issues, 2 obstacles, to fight for what is my right, but risk the destruction of Islam because of the external powers that are waiting on the side, ready for this internal revolt or civil war between the Muslims, the Byzantines. Number 2 is the absence of what we call political base or people that stand with him so that he can deliver justice. Imam Hassan, in the case of Imam Hassan with Muawiyah, it was the same thing. Huge number of people have talked about various things. I don't believe that in the case of Imam Hassan, there was an external or foreign threat. If Byzantines wanted to attack Muslim community, they would have attacked during Siffin. Battle of Siffin, according to some historians, they say 8 months or 9 months, or according to others, they say 14 months or 8 months or 9 months of constant battle. The entire army of Sham has come towards Iraq, and the entire army of Kufa has gone north to fight. Hardly anybody in Siffin, in Sham. If Byzantine wanted to attack, that would have been the ideal situation, to attack the Sham and Muslims over there. So the idea that Imam Hassan signed peace treaty because he was conscious of the foreign attack against Muslim, I don't buy it. But I focus on the second issue, that the sedition within the Muslim community, within his followers and his army, the fact that they are not prepared, they became battle weary. When he stood up in Madain and delivered the sermon, whatever people that were around, he said, look, I've told you several times, and my father has already told you several times, that Muawiyah is the main threat to the establishment of peace in our society. Would you help me to go there? Everybody shouted, we want to live. You can't go to the battle with such a passive individuals. When the army is no longer there, people they don't want, the head of the tribes are not prepared to join you. What is left for the Imam? He would have been killed, and particularly when Muawiyah sends a letter and the news goes around that Muawiyah was ready for a peace treaty, Hassan refused. And then the battle would have continued. Imam Hassan would have been martyred for nothing, no achievement whatsoever. At least the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, even in that gruesome way that happened during the Ashura, shook the mind of the Muslim community, and people began to organize themselves. But Imam Hassan would have been completely destroyed. So the issue of the absence of the base, the political base, people that are prepared to stand with him. When the believers come to him and they say, these are the people that associated with Amir al-Mu'minin and Imam Hassan and the new Ahlul Bayt. Ya Mudhill al-Mu'minin. You have demeaned, you have denigrated the believers by this peace treaty without understanding what Imam Hassan did and for what purpose. And he said it, that I did this to protect the Muslim community, the few individuals that were left. Otherwise, Muawiyah would have slaughtered everybody under the protection that I offered peace. I gave him a piece of paper signed already for his conditions to be put on it, and he refused. There was nothing else. So the external or foreign threat has no base. The fundamental problem that was imposed on Imam Hassan was the absence or unwillingness of the Muslim society to stand up to deal with this challenge, what we call the evil nature of the political structure that conniving and kills and destroys everything for the sake of power. You need strong force. After Karbala, Ahlul Bayt realized that the notion of organizing a military somehow structure and response to this force, that evil force that exists in Bani Umayyah, doesn't exist. Why? Because people are not there. The political base is not there. Imam Zain al-Abidin starts building. He starts building this new political base. By what? Not relying on the people that are already there in Medina or other places. Buying slaves, up to 1,000 of them. Teaching them, releasing them, qualified now teachers, and sending them around the Muslim world so they become the guide for the new community, knowing fully well who Imam was and what they stood for. It was that foundation that became the foundation of what we call an intellectual movement of Imam Muhammad al-Baqir and Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq. So it wasn't as if later, he makes it again clear. When later on, few months later, when Khawarij rose against Muawiyah, Muawiyah writes a letter to Hassan and says, go and fight Muawiyah. Imam Hassan responds, if I wanted to fight anyone, you were number one on the list, if people would have stood with me. They all knew that they have a duty to correct this corrupt system, the political structure. But short of bringing God into the whole equation and a magic wand that God would move around and change things, which Allah has already made it clear, I'm not going to do it, we have to stand up. And now we understand why the delay in the reappearance. The correct, dedicated political base that needs to stand up, absolute submission to the Imam and understanding who the character the Imam is and what they're supposed to be, still not complete. So Imam Hassan said, okay, oh Lord, I have done my responsibility. He went to Medina, retired to Medina, stayed over there for 10 years, struggled, and created some kind of an intellectual base in which every day he would be present after Salat al-Subh and teach students and scholars and everything else. A hadith that we have from Imam Hassan is from this period of 10 years. Otherwise, to the point that after the demise of Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein, Imam Zain al-Abidin, who came to Medina, says only 5 or 6 individuals, they knew who our Imam, who the Imams were, and they really respected us. This is the Medina of the Holy Prophet that stayed in it for nearly 11 years. And we get to the stage that about 30, 40, 50 years later, 5 people or 6 people, they have any respect or reverence for the Imam. We have to change. And the only way we can do it, both spiritually and intellectually outside. Spiritually, here are another 10 days left. If we haven't done anything, at least let's do it now. Tawbah and change. Al-wara'u an maharim Allah, that the Holy Prophet told Amir al-Mu'mineen. Ya Rasulullah, ma a'zamu al-a'mal fi hadha ash-shahr. What is the greatest thing we can do during this month? Ya Ali, Al-wara'u an maharimillah, to stay away from sinfulness and sinning. So what this is, I have been saying it from the beginning of Ramadan. We are getting close to the last third. Let's move, change ourselves. So long as we are sinning, let's warn everybody, including myself. So long as we are disobedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so long as we sin, we will not be able to change the reality outside. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised would help the mu'mineen, not the Muslimin or the fasiqeen. The true believers. Once we become true believers, then you can turn your face to Allah and say, "Oh Lord, help," and you see the difference. Let me end here. Inshallah, tomorrow night I'm going to go back to the concept of Quran that I started, but then I dropped it to go to some other issues, inshallah. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا. Oh Lord, don't punish us if we forget or if we go astray. Inshallah, just grant us the privilege that we will do something during whatever is left of this month. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.